Bridgestone Americas, and he has quite a story of being in the seat like you, actually working in AHS environment as an intern, as a resident, and then branching out into the corporate for-profit world. I think you'll enjoy hearing his story. I know I have, and getting the opportunity to get to know him, so please give him a warm welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie. And thanks to all of you guys for coming this evening. I apologize for the mix-up. I didn't know there was going to be like 70 plus people. I had goodies for everybody. You're going to see a lot of Bridgestone, but I'm going to give you a little bit more about my background and sharing my experiences with you that I hope can relate with what you're doing today, where you're going, or where you might want to go. And I welcome questions throughout the conversation. I want this to be informal. I have some slides that I prepared and have time at the end to do Q&A, but feel free if you've got a question. Don't hesitate to raise your hand. We'd like to address it then, and we'll have time at the end of the presentation to go over that as well. Again, my name is Tony Casabono. We're jumping ahead a little bit. Just want to give you a quick snapshot of what we want to cover over the next 30 to 40 minutes. Give you a little bit of background of who I am and where I've been over the last 10 or so years. Talk about my personal goals when I was younger, growing up, those experiences I've had and how that connects to where I am today. Talk about the 3 companies I've worked for and lessons I've learned that I think will be beneficial for you to take, and some of you may relate to others, and you may have questions about the company and experience I've had that are outside of what I'm sharing tonight. Would welcome that. Building on what I've learned and then continuing the journey. I've been at Bridgestone since June of last year. The interview process, I knew when I was sitting in your shoes. Those are some of the questions I had, is what to expect. And I've got some experiences since I've been in corporate America that I'd like to share with you on what to expect and what I've learned, what that employer is looking for in a candidate. Faith-based versus secular. I've worked in for-profit for 4 years and non-for-profit on the faith-based side with Adventist Health Systems for 8 years. I want to talk about the challenges, but opportunities that I've experienced. And then my personal top 5. What I think are the top 5 things I'd like to leave you with. And then the last thing I'd like to share with you, a call to action. What I would challenge you guys to think about when you walk out of this room this evening. And we've got Q&A. So 10 years in the mission field of corporate America. This is my wife, Michelle. She graduated a year after I did. She CPA, MBA. She's worked in Adventist Health Systems for a lot of her career. Right now she's a full-time mom, a mother of 2. She, unfortunately, she wanted to be here this evening, but she couldn't make it. I've got 2 little boys. This is Anthony, he's 4, and Andrew. This is a picture of cutting a Christmas tree. Some of you guys may be familiar with doing that up north or wherever you grew up. But this is kind of the love and joy of my life outside of my day-to-day and working at Bridgestone and the other companies that I've been at. I had the privilege to be a student here at Southern Adventist University, graduated in 2004. I started out as a business pre-med major. I wanted to be a doctor and have that business background. After just over a year of organic chemistry, I decided to stop and just focus on business. But before continuing on, I want to just ask those of you here today, do we have any marketing majors? Can you just get a show of hands? Okay, good. What about accounting or finance? All right, you guys made a really good choice. And those marketing, everybody else, you guys, it's not too late, unless you're a senior. But choosing accounting was the best decision I ever made, times 2. That helped me from a spouse perspective. I came to Southern Adventist University for 2 reasons. One, to find a spouse that had the same beliefs as I did, and just as important was a career. And accounting was not what I had set out to do from a long-term career perspective. I wanted to focus on marketing. But after taking principles of accounting, I took a step back and said, if I'm going to go into business, I need to understand the foundation of business, when what I believe is on the accounting or finance side. So I stole my wife's friend's seat in intermediate accounting, and I never looked back. And it was the best decision I ever made. In 2004, I took a job in accounting And just to back up a little bit before that, just to give you a little bit more of context, when I worked at summer camp. Anybody here work at summer camp before? Okay, quite a few. I did that as long as I could. And I said, I got to get a real job. If I'm going to get a real job, I need to get an internship. And that was, besides the majors, and that was a really big decision that I made. And if I could look back on it, maybe I should have done one more internship in marketing. But I did in accounting, and that paved the way to get me my first job. Worked in Nashville, or the Nashville, Tennessee area for a couple years at Tennessee Christian Medical Center before it was sold to HCA. And at that point, it was like a pivot point for me, saying, do I want to stay in accounting? Do I want to get out? I had never thought about HR. Trying to give you a little bit of background on how I got into HR. When I was at Southern, there was not an HR major. You could do psychology, but never really thought of that as a career. And after 2 years, I pursued a marketing leadership job in Michigan, and that fell through because the job ended up not having that job. And I interviewed for the leadership development program at corporate office and was offered the HR residency program. It's a 2-year program, and it opened my eyes to HR. I had really wanted to pursue more of a broader business in healthcare, but really connected with the HR VP. He said, I want your finance background in HR. So when I talk about finance, again, it's not too late if you're not doing finance. When you get into the business world, whether you do a finance major or not, it's good to understand that. And when I did HR for 2 years, I got exposed to every aspect. I worked at Florida Hospital, did a stint in shared services, worked in benefits. And just under 2 years, I was offered the opportunity to go up and interview for a job up in Chicago and accepted a leadership role in compensation. And I'm going to go ahead and move on. But in taking that role in Chicago, let me just back up a little bit. That led me to my first compensation role. And from there, let's speak to some experiences that I had that really prepared me for more of the Fortune 500, that corporate experience on the for-profit side. And kind of a segue to my personal mission statement. I grew up in Japan. My parents were missionaries for 5 years. I was 5 to 10 years old. We lived in Osaka and Yokohama, just outside of Tokyo. And from that young age, I wanted to be a missionary. I didn't want to be a missionary abroad necessarily, unless God opened that door from a business perspective. But I wanted to be a missionary in corporate America. I thought, what greater honor or privilege would that be to share Christ with others in a secular environment where people are Christians, they're busy, they're working. It's a very competitive, for-profit mentality. And you see that on the healthcare side as well, but you see it even more so in the corporate America sphere. So since a young age, I wanted to be in corporate America and be a missionary in that aspect. That was my personal mission statement, to serve the Lord in corporate America. Adventist Health Systems, I was there for about 8 years, and I kind of already shared a little bit about the accounting side, residency, and regional HR residency perspective. I took a leadership role in compensation, and I want to kind of start off with the quote here by Richard Branson that says, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity and you're not sure you can do it, say yes, then learn how to do it later. I took the job in Chicago. I had been in compensation for a couple of months, and they were asking me to do X. I had not been an expert. I had not been learning. I had just come out of a leadership development program. Did I know how to do everything? No. But I seized the opportunity and built the relationships and really just said, let's solve one problem at a time, work with others. When I got up to Chicago, there was going to be a person that was going to be reporting to me, and that person was no longer there. So it was really pretty chaotic for that first year, but kind of had to get back to the basics. So I've got 4 key lessons that I want to share with you that I learned in my time at Adventist Health Systems. A lot of it is centered around my role at Adventist Midwest Health. You guys are probably all familiar with Management 101. You've taken management classes here at Southern. But what we learned quickly was most people were not doing the basics. Now, AIDIT stands for acknowledge, introduce, duration, explain, and thank you. And what that means is when you have a meeting, we'd have meetings and we would sit down and we wouldn't know what we're solving for. We didn't know the purpose. We wouldn't thank people. We wouldn't say, hey, we're here for about 20 minutes. This is what we're gonna cover. Here's who's responsible, and thank you for being here. So it's just kind of some common courtesies. 10-5 rule. As I was here today, you guys are great at that. It's just, being friendly and smiling. When you see somebody in the hallway, looking at them directly in the eye and saying hi, or good morning, or good afternoon. Rounding. That really has to do with asking for feedback. Rounding with your internal customers and saying, hey, what am I doing well? What am I not doing well? What can I do to improve? Wins. That has to do with celebration. What we learned early on in Adventist Health Systems, and I saw that on the corporate for-profit side as well, is you get so busy with the day-to-day, you forget about the people in the room. You forget that everybody here, each one of you here, you're a person. You have a history. You have a story to tell. And what we really focus is on the basics. If you have an hour meeting, just take 2 or 3 minutes to get to know the people on your team. It may be a cross-functional team. You don't know who that person is. And if you just focus on the day-to-day and say, will you do this for me, let's work together, and just focus, you lose sight of some of those personal things. And we believe as we roll these programs out, focusing on the basics, that connecting with people and having that personal connection would go a long ways to accomplishing the goals we were trying to accomplish. And managing people, a simple pat on the back, recognition, managing people, developing them, and having those conversations, saying, what can I do for you? Is there anything I can do to help? Just that simple question. Is there anything I can do to help? And a lot of these things were not happening at all. And even in my experiences at Whirlpool and Bridgestone, these aren't hardwired. If you can learn to do these, you're in a really good space. What we ended up doing was spending millions of dollars, bringing in outside consultants to teach us the basics. Cultivating relationships to increase impact. When we brought these consultants in, I was asked to take on some additional responsibilities around employee engagement, recognition, things I had never done before, but I seized the opportunity. I said, okay, what is it that we need to do, and how are we going to go about doing it? And the lesson learned for me and what I learned and applied in that role was get to know your stakeholders, get to know who it is that you want to be part of that team. And one of the things I did that I thought was very beneficial was I wrote down who that ideal person was in terms of the candidate. Like if you're hiring a position, what are the companies, what's that skill set? If you're trying to describe the best person for your team, what would that be? And I went around to the leaders and I said, this is what we're looking for to fill a new team that we're creating, and collaborated with them to get a list of names, and then created a team. And really focusing on creating a great team and working closely together, and fostering the relationship among people, and saying, you're not just a team member, but you're a leader on the team. And what I really tried to do on the leadership side and cultivating those relationships is you can only do so much as a leader, but you can do so much more through others. You can do so much more through others, but you have to be willing to let go. You have to be willing to let go and let other people lead. And the way we would set up meetings is we would dole out responsibilities, and I would ask for volunteers, and we wouldn't leave until other people were taking leadership roles and contributing to the greater good of the team, whether that was with wellness, whether it was recognition, employee engagement, etc. Differentiating yourself. When I was at Adventist Health Systems in Chicago, I had the privilege and very blessed with being responsible and having additional responsibilities that came on. But you've got to go and you've got to ask for it. It's not going to just come and be given to you. Or if something is given to you, you want to take it and run with it. And think, how can I add value back to the business? How does it line up with the mission of the company? And then how do you align stakeholders, collaborate with others, and look to deliver extraordinary results with what you've been asked to do? The other things you can really do is around education. You can do certifications. I took on and said, I'm currently doing comp in HRIS, but I want to be in benefits. I want to grow from an HR professional. Just because you're not being asked to do something, start living like you want to do that today. and it can really help you get ready for that next. Because my job, my passion, my goal was to get into a Fortune 500 company. I mean, Adventist Health Systems is a great company, but I wanted to get in that for-profit door. And how do you go from a faith-based, non-for-profit healthcare company? I was trying to do as many things as I could to differentiate myself. That way, when I applied for a job, or if somebody reached out to me, I would have a better opportunity to get in, get my foot in the door. Whether that was Whirlpool or if it was another company that came up. And look for opportunities to live out the mission each and every day. Adventist Health Systems' mission is to extend the healing ministry of Christ. You can't get a better mission than that, in my opinion. It doesn't mean it's lived out every day by every leader, every time. But what I tried to do is every meeting I led, Christ was the center of each meeting. I think prayer is very powerful. James chapter 5, verse 16 says, the prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective. You have to believe that and you have to live that. And what I tried to do at Adventist Health Systems, because I had the opportunity to be more free in how I talked, I looked for opportunities. I looked how I could live that out each day. And one of the examples was every time I led a meeting, it wasn't just starting each meeting with prayer, it was ending each day with prayer. It's kind of like, what we all know is, in terms of whether you have a devotion, it's good to just start every day with God and end every day with God. And I tried to live that out in the meetings. And I would even take time outside just to pray about it and ask for God's guidance and wisdom. Whirlpool Corporation, building on lessons learned. I finally made it. I wanted to get into a Fortune 500 company, and I would really say that these four lessons learned helped prepare me for it. I was at a kind of a pivot point in Chicago where they were doing consolidations, and I would have needed to leave to go to Florida. And I didn't want to go to Florida, and I really wanted to stay in the Midwest, and I wanted to get into a for-profit company. I applied for a manager role at Whirlpool Corporation, the global headquarters, and was offered the role to lead compensation for the North America, about 28,000 employees. Whirlpool is the largest manufacturer of home appliances. Just under 100,000 employees, 21 billion, and Whirlpool's in around 170 countries. So truly a global company. I'm guessing most of you guys have some type of Whirlpool appliance, whether it's a KitchenAid stand mixer, a washer, a dryer, some other US brands of JennAir, Amana, Whirlpool, KitchenAid, etc. Those are some of the common ones. And we have footprints in different regions of the world. The two things I'd like to focus on today in terms of sharing the lessons I learned, and kind of before doing that, in building on what I learned in my role in Chicago, the two things that I try to take with me is around building strong teams and how to do that in a global setting, and taking time to celebrate small wins. And I ran into some challenges in doing that, but at the end of my time at Whirlpool, it finally had been embedded, and people feeling like, yeah, I get why you do that, and I like it because it connects people. You're connecting them with the whole team to get their buy-in and support. And I'd like to also talk about number 2 and number 3 in particular. When I was at Southern, I did PowerPoint presentations. When I was at Adventist Health Systems, I did some PowerPoint presentations. When I was at Whirlpool Corporation, I did PowerPoint presentations every day. It was crazy. It really made me think, because in prior roles, I had thought about, okay, you want to make this the best you can. You don't just think about your boss and who you're presenting to. You got to think that your boss is going to take it to your boss's boss, who's going to take it to your boss's boss's boss. My boss and I spent countless hours, sometimes on a presentation or different material that we're preparing. It could be something I was responsible for, something he was responsible for, but scrutinizing every single detail, every number, making sure that it lined up exactly. This information particularly was sensitive on the executive compensation and the global compensation in terms of where it was going to the CEO, CFO, etc. The prior executive comp person had made one mistake, and that person was no longer with the company. And I can't say for certain it's because they were fired, they were let go, but you've got to be very careful and my boss stepped into that role, and there was a little bit of history. At Bridgestone, it's not necessarily the same in terms of that high level of scrutiny. At Whirlpool, it was very high level in terms of that scrutiny that you had to prepare for. I encourage you guys, where you go from here, always think about thinking about this is going to the highest level. It's not just your boss, but think about you're presenting to the CEO of a company, whether it's a small company, big company, doesn't matter. Embracing challenges. When I took the role at Whirlpool Corporation, I was the lead for Compensation North America. I was also asked to lead the Global Recognition Program, and in my experiences in Chicago, I was super excited about taking what I had learned in Michigan or in Chicago and applying it on a global level. Within 2 months, my boss changed, and my boss came to me and said, "I don't want you to do recognition anymore." And I was like, "Are you serious?" That's what I'm thinking. I probably showed a little bit nonverbal too. He said, "I want you to take on performance management." Now, performance management, no experience, didn't really want to do anything with it. He said, recognition is not looked at very favorably at Whirlpool. We got to have it, but the CEO and other executives, it's not that important. Recognition, or performance management, it's very important. And I want you to have that opportunity to take this. And I've got some ideas about what you could do. What do you think? And I kind of took a step back, went home that night, really didn't want to do it, but knew I needed to embrace it. Sometimes the things that help you grow the most are the things you don't want to do. And performance management was one of those things. Just to give you a little bit of history on performance management at Whirlpool, because it's very paid for performance. Whirlpool has a five performance rating scale. Extraordinary results, you get a 200% differentiator if you deliver at a high level. Very strong is the next highest at 150%. Strong results is 100%. Then you've got needs to improve. You get like a 50 or 75% differentiator, and I'll explain this in a second. And then unacceptable results, 0%. And when I'm saying that is, if you have a bonus target of say 20%, if you deliver at the highest level, you get 40%. And that's pretty aggressive in the company I'm at today, and then looking at the benchmark or the peer companies that we looked at, it's a little uncommon, but what makes it even more interesting is, take that times 2. If you work at Whirlpool and the company does well and you do well, you get 400%. That's a lot of money, and when you get up to the executive levels, it's even a lot more money. Now that's a little bit unrealistic, in my opinion. I did see bonuses that got up to around 250 and 300%. When you think about pay for performance, there's the other side of it. There's the what did you deliver and how did you do it? There's a lot of frustrations, a lot of feelings back and forth. And you may have heard about companies that are getting rid of performance management because they think it's, they want to decouple the rating from the bonus. Like there's companies out west that are doing that. Whirlpool was standing strong and saying no. And it was very important to the CEO. He had actually helped to create it. And they felt that was a big driver in terms of the results that we were getting as a company. But there was people that didn't like it because you have forced rankings. You're a high performer, you get forced down to strong. Because you can't have as many high performers as everybody thinks. And you've got to have an equal playing field. Now in HR, you take all the HR managers and you take their bosses, you get in a room and you say, this is what Susie did, this is what John did, this is what all these people did, and you have to defend your people. And there's a lot of fighting that goes on. I wasn't in those conversations, I just heard about it. I had to manage it. And it was very, EP&R, extraordinary performance and results. That was our performance management framework. My boss had led a project to refresh EP&R. The idea was to try to tackle some of these obstacles that we've been facing. The question was, we looked at our feedback, people still had issues and concerns because managers weren't capable of doing some of the things they need to do, the basics, again, the basics. Being able to have that conversation and manage people throughout the year. What ended up happening, to kind of take a long story just to shorten it a little bit, I led a small core team and a global team, and we ended up doing a pilot. We did a U.S. pilot and global implementation around the EP&R Manager Minute. And what that was, it was a series of videos. I got privileged to interview the CEO, other senior leaders. And we rolled out like 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 minute videos that ranged. focus was on tackling different areas that we had gaps in within the performance management cycle. You know, developing teammates, how do you do that? Recognizing teammates, what do you need to do? Key tips, advice, that in a couple of minutes a leader could watch a video and get enough nuggets of information to take away and then go start using that in their day-to-day as a leader. What was fun about that project was the chief HR officer said it couldn't happen. He supported it, but in the back, my boss said, yeah, he doesn't think this is going anywhere. That made me really interested in being successful. I love a challenge. I love it. If you tell me it can't happen, I'll prove you wrong. And with the team that we put together, we ended up making it very successful and had the privilege to present at a national conference and was asked to speak at a conference in New York City, but I ended up leaving Whirlpool. And it was really exciting. And what was more exciting to see some of these things, whether that was in Chicago, is taking an idea. It's not about you or what you're doing, it's trying to make an impact. You know, trying to make a difference, whether that's in the non-for-profit or the for-profit world. And the Manager Minute was one of the things that was really interesting to kind of take on and embrace, because I'm out of performance management. I don't want to ever go back to performance management. But it was a challenge, and I embraced it. And I would encourage you guys, wherever you go from here, to embrace challenges. If it's something you think you don't want to do, you probably should do it. I mean, there's times where, you know, you got to think it through and pray about it. But if it's your boss coming and knocking, think really hard before saying no to that opportunity, because those could be the best things you ever done. Bridgestone Corporation, continuing the journey. I started Bridgestone June 1 of last year, and I'll share a little bit about, I ran into some conflicts from a faith perspective at Whirlpool. We had some leadership changes and had some conflicts from a Sabbath perspective. And I knew that if I wanted to continue to grow at Whirlpool, I would have to compromise on my faith, and I wasn't willing to do that out of a nutshell. And at that same time, I was contacted by a headhunter for an opportunity at Bridgestone Americas. Bridgestone Americas, as you guys may or may not know, is about a $35 billion company, 144,000 employees. In the Americas, we've got about 55,000 employees, and about half the business in terms of the global makeup. The Americas headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. Coming back home. I started in Nashville. I'm back in Nashville. I have no plans to go anywhere. It's a great city and a great company. When I started at Bridgestone last year, it was a team of 5. Within 3 months, we lost 3 people. These lessons I've learned, just real practical. And, you know, being an Adventist and being in a setting at Whirlpool and Bridgestone, it's a little harder to share your faith. You have to do it by like nonverbal leadership. You have to build those relationships and really get to know people. I look for opportunities every day, and I've got another slide where I'll share a few more of my personal experiences with. There's a Japanese gentleman. He's on a 2-year program right now, and if I think this is chaotic, what I'm going through right now, it's nothing compared to Japan and the culture there. Just to give you an example, like I'll get into work at 5 or 6 in the morning, work a 12, 13-hour day, and in Japan, they're working another 3 or 4 hours because you don't go home till the boss goes home. In America, it's a little different. You don't go home till the work's not done, so it's a little different. Being positive and proactive is probably the biggest thing that I've learned, because there's been so many days where I don't necessarily feel that, but I've got to live that. I've got to live to be positive and proactive, especially when you lose half your team. And be flexible. My boss has changed my boss has been asked to do so many different things. One day we're going this way, one day we're going that way. We had a teammate that was leading a 2 or 3 year project leave within a month of when the project was due for different reasons. So you could say, well, you joined a really crappy situation. Well, that's the negative way to look at it. I try to look at it in a positive way, because within the craziness and the chaos that we're dealing with, there's unbelievable opportunity. And Bridgestone, more than any company I've worked at, is focused on the team. If you want to be a part of a company that focuses on the team, that cares about you as a team, we don't call them employees, we call you a teammate. Everybody's a teammate. There's 144,000 teammates in Bridgestone Corporation, 55,000 in the Americas. And they treat you really, really well. They expect a lot, but they take really good care of you. Whether that's pay or benefits, it's really just about how they talk to you. How are you doing? Can I help you? They do the basics better than any other company I work for. This is a picture of our headquarters that will be going up. It's going up as we speak. We're going to be moving into the new headquarters. It'll be the tallest building in Nashville. I'm not too excited about that. I don't really want to work in a tall building, but apparently HR is going to be right up there. The first 10 or so levels are all parking. So it's really nice. Company's paying for parking. You come right in. We're moving teammates from Chicago, the Bloomingdale area, and Indianapolis. We're all going to be under one roof. That's really exciting. We're a large company, but we're a large company with small companies underneath. We have acquired a lot of companies in the last 10 or 15 years, but we haven't operated as one company, and that's the challenge. When you have compensation, and it's like a centers of excellence, and you're trying to roll out to be consistent, to be fair, to be transparent, it's not easy to do that. Especially when some people like to make exceptions. I won't say who that is, but we always get exceptions, and you'll see that in every company. We see a lot more at Bridgestone than I've ever seen. Sometimes to a fault, because we're trying to take care of the employee. We recently rolled out a new compensation framework. Just to give an example, we have really good incentives. They were way more competitive, probably like the 100th percentile. We're at the top of the market when we think about incentives. We just changed that framework, but we decided to grandfather every single teammate for 10 years. Crazy. But I'm thankful because I'm a benefactor, but I have to deal with it now. All right, just a little bit more history. Has anybody hear about Bridgestone almost acquired a pretty large company in the last year? Anybody hear about that? In the last couple of months, Bridgestone just lost out on a bidding war. So I thought this would be pretty practical. I wasn't a fly on the wall. I wish I had been. But you read case studies in business class, or you do your MBA. When you hear about this and kind of got to live as part of that, the companies I've worked for have not been big merger and acquisition companies. We were in a bidding war. Well, we didn't know we were in a bidding war with Icahn Enterprises out of New York City, and Pep Boys is the company that we're trying to acquire. They have a retail footprint of 800 stores in areas of the country we wanted to be a part of. Firestone Auto Care, you may or may not have heard of. That's 2,200 stores across the country. It's a big part of our America's business in the U.S. We would have been able to increase our size by about 30%. They accepted our offer for $15 a share. Apparently, it was not binding. And there was a bidding war right before Christmas. Right after Christmas, we lost out to them for $18.50 a share. It was like, I don't know how we lost that, but we did. And just want to kind of share that because it's like my boss was part of that. We had put out a whole team to kind of start to get ready for that integration. And now we're moving on without that acquisition. The interview process, what to expect. What I wish I would have known when I was sitting in your shoes 12 years ago. Trying to get your foot in the door. Number 1 and number 3, always seeking, not waiting, or starting your job now in your current role. Those are the things I think are probably the most important. You got to go out and want it, and you got to go out and get it. And if you're in a current role today, start acting like you're in that future role today. Ask for more things to do. When I took on the compensation HRIS role, I was always looking for something else to do. I knew I wanted to grow in total rewards. I asked for things to do in benefits. I did a benefits certification. I wanted to do wellness. I'm passionate about that faith-based and Adventist health system about extending the healing ministry of Christ. If you've never had an internship, get an internship. That will open opportunities bar none. The interview process. Trying to get the job. Now, one thing I learned when I interviewed at Whirlpool, I've interviewed with the HR VP, the VP of Total Rewards. And I had prepared, I thought, really well. I had talked about all the behavioral type interview questions you might think of, talking about why I should be good, why I could deliver it on this job. But what he wanted to know was not so much about the job. He wanted to know about how well I knew the business. And as you grow in your career, I would encourage you, even early on, get to know more of the business and be a business leader, even if you're just an HR leader in sales. When I interviewed at Whirlpool Corporation, I almost didn't take the job when they gave it to me. Number 2 on the interview process, you want to ask really good questions, not just to show that you belong, but to get to know your future manager and your future coworkers, whether or not you want to work with them. When I interviewed at Whirlpool Corporation, it was really interesting because my boss, I completely did not connect on any level. I said, I don't want to work for this guy. And what was interesting, the guy that was talking with me, like acting like my future manager, I want to work for this guy. I want to work for this guy, hands down. And I almost didn't take the job because I knew that if I worked for this other gentleman, it could be detrimental, very bad. I took a risk and it paid off. And in part because the person that was my manager ended up leaving the company. There was other people feeling the same thing, unfortunately. I mean, he's a good guy, but in terms of how he managed and what he was able to get out of his team, people weren't learning, and they provided that feedback in 360 surveys and engagement surveys, etc. You've got to ask really good questions, and you've got to look for those nonverbal cues, because once you're in, and you want to think through that before accepting the job. I'd also stress how is much more important than what. Especially as you grow in your career, it's not so much what you know, it's how you do. It's not so much what you know, but it's how you go about getting it and building those relationships with others. It's that social intelligence, that social IQ, that you can only go so far. But once you get to that level, you've got to be able to build those relationships and believe, and people have got to trust you that you can get the job done. And then the last thing, dress for success and have fun. You guys get A+ for that. You got to have fun. You got to, they're real people. You got to make sure that you take time each day to have fun during that process. This is my personal mission statement: to serve the Lord in corporate America. You can see the other mission statements. I won't read there. I'll just paraphrase. Extending the healing ministry of Christ, creating demand, serving society. These are all great mission statements. The question is, how does that fit in with your mission statement? What's your mission statement, and where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? More importantly, where do you want to be in 20 to 30 years, and how does that fit in? From an opportunity perspective, especially in Chicago, I had the privilege to do Bible studies. Got support from the chaplains department. Did Bible studies. I said, what do you guys want to talk about? We talked about the state of the day. We talked about the Gospel of John. I led on Bible studies, and if you ever want to know how you can make sure you get people to come, make sure there's free food. The chaplains department was very, very kind in donating funds. We did that for over a year. And that's the kind of stuff that I live for, right? That's outside of my job, but this is where you can make a difference and be a missionary. Again, going back to my personal mission statement is to serve the Lord in corporate America. Doing these things are the most important things I did. You got to do the day-to-day. You want to grow as a leader. You want to grow in your career and learn new things. But building those relationships, doing Bible studies. These last two are ones really that I did at Whirlpool and Bridgestone. Again, I think I said earlier that it's a lot harder on the for-profit side in the non-faith setting, but you can still do it. It's just more of a challenge. You got to build those relationships. What's really neat about Whirlpool, they have intramurals, do football, basketball, just like here at Southern. And that's opportunities to build those relationships, get to know people, get outside of your day-to-day, and connect with people on a personal level. I had a lot of conversations with people at Whirlpool, more than I thought of, about Seventh-day Adventists, what I believe as a Seventh-day Adventist, why I believe what I do. My first month in the job, a colleague and I, as account manager and executive comp, we're traveling down to one of our manufacturing plants, and we talk for 3 or 4 hours about God and why I believe what I do. He doesn't go to church every day, but it's those opportunities to kind of shed light and share light with others. My boss, at one point, he said, "Do you think people outside of Seventh-day Adventists are going to be in heaven?" And I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Absolutely." Because we had so many, I know that's just a real brief summary, and I can talk to you more about it later, but he was really pushing hard, and he wanted to know where I stood. And they also want to know where you stand from a consistency perspective. Do you say one thing and do another? I hope not. And I saw other Seventh-day Adventists in name, but not in the day-to-day. But if you're going to be a Seventh-day Adventist and you want to be a missionary, you've got to stand and you've got to be consistent. If you're not, you can never be a missionary in corporate America wherever you are. But you've got to want to be a missionary, and you've got to want to share that with others. Challenges, the Sabbath rest on the corporate side, I left Whirlpool because of conflicts. I knew I couldn't stay long term and continue to grow. Now that will vary. That's not in every role at Whirlpool, but that was in my role and in my centers of excellence and where I was. I read in between the lines, and things were changing, and I said, I prayed about it. Other opportunities came up where I felt like I continued to be a missionary in corporate America on the for-profit side, and Bridgestone really aligns well with where I want to be long term. And in the challenges, it's real cutthroat. You got to be ready for that. Whether it's at Bridgestone, Whirlpool is probably even more so, publicly traded company here in the U.S. Bridgestone is more like a private company. We are publicly traded in Japan, but we're treated more like a private company. They kind of let us do more what we do. It's probably similar to other, Asian foreign-owned companies. God will supply us with the opportunity, but it's up to us to do something with it. So God's going to give you an opportunity, whether you graduate this year, next year, wherever you're at, from an educational perspective here at Southern, you go on to do your master's. God's going to give you the opportunity, but you've got to want it, you've got to sign up for it, and you've got to do it. And one of my favorite verses in the Bible is from Psalms, I believe chapter 37. It says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do it." So you've got to delight yourself in God. You've got to commit your way to God, and you've got to trust Him. So there's 3 pivotal things. And I would challenge you to think about that no matter where you're at, from where you are spiritually. If you can delight yourself, commit, and trust, He's going to bless you in ways you may never imagine. When I was sitting in your seats 12 years ago, I never would have imagined a BHR. I knew I wanted to get in corporate America for profit. I didn't know necessarily how to get there, but God has only opened up one door. When I took the role at Bridgestone, there was 2 doors. 2 Fortune 100, 150 companies. One on the East Coast, one in Nashville. I interviewed at both. I got vibes that the other one is one I didn't want to accept. So I told them I'm not interested. God ended up not even opening that door. He only opened one. So I didn't even have to think about it, but I kind of already said I'm not interested. And I didn't want to have to go through picking which one I'd be interested in doing. God will open opportunities for you. You just got to trust Him. So real quick, I want to wrap up with my personal top 5 keys to success. Number 5, know your personal priorities. For me, it's God's number 1, family's number 2, work's number 3. And that is a delicate thing to balance. It is not easy, especially if you have children, etc. On the Japanese side, just to give you kind of a contrast, work is number 2, your boss is number 3. Work is number 1, your boss is number 2, family is like 3 or 4. Completely different. I talked with this friend of mine that sits right next to me. But you've got to know your personal priorities, and you've got to think 3, 5, 10, 30 years out. Not only what are your priorities in terms of that, but also your goals. Where do you want to be? And think about that long term. Initiation leads to differentiation. I would encourage you to seek opportunities to educate yourself, get experiences outside of your comfort zone that you never maybe would have thought of, expand your horizon. And I believe that doing both of those will increase one thing, your know-how IQ. You'll know what to do, but even more so, you'll know how to do it. And doing that, I believe, will differentiate you in a lot of ways. Practice, practice, practice. It sounds simple, but it's not easy to do. Especially when your boss is asking you to do 10 things that drive the business, you got to manage a team of 10. How do you do that? Don't forget about the basics, but practice them, practice them, practice them. If you can do the common things extraordinarily well, you'll be very uncommon, very uncommon. You don't see that very often. And cultivating relationships to broaden impact. I would encourage you guys, when you go out to your first job or wherever you go, to focus on building relationships within your current sphere of influence. And do that extraordinarily well, and you'll get extraordinary results. But in thinking about where you want to be down the road, cultivate relationships with that future or that desired state of influence. If you can do that, that'll help lead to your next level. So it's kind of like you do what you know you need to do, and you work through others to deliver great results. But if you know you want to move up, you've got to build those relationships with others at that next level so they trust you, they believe you, they want you. And if you do that, you can differentiate yourself to get to that next level in the organization. How many people here like to be told, how many people here like feedback, good or bad? That's good. Because I've seen experiences in situations where people don't like that. Now, getting tough feedback is probably a lot harder. People like to say, they're doing a good job, a pat on the back. But seize opportunities to live out the mission every day and seek for feedback, ask for feedback, and then listen and act accordingly. When somebody gives you feedback, you have to filter it. You want to acknowledge it and respond appropriately, but make sure you ask for feedback and not just do that once a year. If you have a team you manage, ask for feedback. If not, they're going to give it to you, either verbal or nonverbal. I've seen situations where people don't get feedback, but they leave the company because it's not a healthy situation. We're going to watch a short video here about a situation I had the opportunity to do up in Chicago in living out the mission of extending the healing ministry of Christ.
I worked for that organization over 36 years. I wasn't able to drive. Walking from being dropped off downstairs to walking to my desk would take me probably about 15 minutes to get to my desk, because I'd have to stop and rest in between walking all the way in. I don't have to do that anymore. It is amazing how much better I feel. 2 years ago, I was 137 pounds heavier, on a lot more medicine than I am now.
We're going from a culture of, we extend the healing ministry of Christ, we take care of the patients from a whole person perspective, but now we're doing that with our employees. Came from an idea. An employee shared to us saying, we are a healthcare company, but what are we doing to promote that, and what are we doing to encourage employees to live a healthy lifestyle? There was nothing going on for wellness. We had no initiatives. It was, you have health insurance, you have your benefits, but there wasn't much outside of that. In the first year that we ran this, we had about 70 employees participate. Year 2, we had about 115 employees, and this year we're looking at over 500.
Being on a team helps because you have someone else who is just as invested as you are, and you can help healthier too. I mean, so you have support on days that I don't really feel like, going and walking around at lunch.
There's been an incredible shift in the culture. When I got here, everybody was in their respective departments. I work in HR, you work in accounting, we don't talk. But as we've implemented different programs, and wellness has been a big part of that, it's gone from having everybody in their own spaces to a relationship and a cultural shift where we're sharing ideas, because we're not 15 different departments, we're one team, and we work really hard to make sure that that culture stays strong.
When I look at food, it's like, okay, I now look at it as fuel for me versus comfort. I'm getting my comfort more from the promises that I find in the Bible. This year, I was able to go up to the exercise room upstairs with 2 of my team members, that we go up and we spend the 25 minutes on the machines or walking or whatever. And that is big. I mean, that is big. A big part of my goal is being healthier. The weight loss is an added bonus.
I'd like to end by I want to read a verse from Matthew. You guys are probably familiar with this. But before doing that, I would ask you guys, what's your mission statement? What's your personal mission statement here at Southern Adventist University? And more importantly, what's your personal mission statement when you leave and where you're going? Most of you are probably all business majors, I'm guessing. You probably know where you want to go, or you're still thinking about it and praying about it. But before leaving Southern Adventist University, think deeper than that. God has called each one of us to be missionaries, I believe. Whether you're teacher, pastor, that's not for this room, but it's for this campus. And in Matthew chapter 28, verses 19, it says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. Surely I'm with you always, even to the very end of the age." I had the privilege to be a missionary in Japan. I've had the privilege to be a missionary in corporate America on the for-profit and not-for-profit side. I would challenge each one of you guys to think about it before you leave Southern. Create one if you don't have one. What's your mission statement? And take that with you everywhere you go. With that, I'd like to take the next 5 or so minutes, or I'm happy to answer questions. I do have some giveaways, so don't be shy. I apologize, and again, we don't have enough up here, but after we take some formal Q&A, then, please come by and take one of these giveaways. There's some freebies inside. But before doing that, I'd like to open it up. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
You mentioned that for Whirlpool, part of the reason why you left was just dealing with Sabbath issues. So what is probably, in your opinion, the best way to confront that should it ever come up with you in Bridge Seven?
Yeah, what's your name?
Patricia.
Patricia, great question. I asked questions earlier on in my interview process with Bridgestone. When I took the job at Whirlpool, I asked afterwards, I said, this is my faith, this is what I believe in. And after that experience, I said, I'm going to address it early on. They had not officially offered me the job, but it was pretty much there. And there's 3 things I prayed about. And God opened 2 of those, which were the most important. And one of them was the faith piece. And I told them, ask a question in terms of my beliefs and what conflicts they might see, and they resoundingly were very positive and open, and that it wouldn't be an issue. Now, is that a guarantee? No. But I wanted to be upfront early on in that process because I didn't want to go to Bridgestone and after 2 or 3 years feel like it was the same situation I was at Whirlpool. So, great question. Because you're the first one to ask a question, I've got a freebie for you. Let's see. Would you like golf balls or golf balls?
I'll do a water
All right. There you go. All right. Who's next? Yes, over there.
So you were saying earlier that you use your mission, in your work as a mission to help people to get to know Christ here in the United States. How can we help this in the Japanese culture where it's very strict to have the mission work being done there?
Say that last part again. Sorry.
How can we help in the Japanese culture to spread our mission as Seventh-day Adventists to share Christ with them since it's very strict to share the gospel over there?
That's a great question. That's a tough one because just to give an example from a Japanese culture perspective, a colleague of mine, his name is Rue. He's going to be leaving in a couple of months, but I'm trying to build that relationship with him ever since I joined last year. In the elevators in Japan, you don't talk to people. You don't know them, you don't talk. In America, when you ride up elevators or you're out in the hallway, you're looking at them in the eye, you're using that 10-5 rule and friendly. In Japan, that doesn't happen. It's really tough. Fortunately, this gentleman, he's trying to break the trend, so it's a little bit easier. And I've looked for opportunities. I eat lunch with him every week or every other week. I've reached out to some pastors in California trying to get material that I could share with him. It's really about the relationship. I've invited him to church a couple times. This Sabbath, him and his wife and his son are going to church in Nashville, and they love it. But they don't know about God, right? It's gonna take a while. And in terms of breaking those barriers or reaching Christ beyond that, I haven't had the experience to work with a lot of other Japanese. But bet if I were to go to Japan, it would be that times 1,000, times 1,000,000. You just got to be willing to go slow, and you got to pray about it. Would you like golf balls or a water bottle?
Water bottle.
All right, here you go. All right, good catch. All right, who's next? Yes.
So you don't really hear a lot about successful students from this school going on to work in secular environments. How did your experience here at Southern help prepare you for that, or what do you wish that you had done at the school to prepare you better to work in a secular environment?
It's a really good question. I took on as much as I could at Southern. Now, do I wish there had been more, especially on the marketing side? Yes, because that's what I wanted to do. There's a lot on the accounting side when I was here 12 years ago and before that, before I graduated. I did a marketing internship. I took on marketing projects. I got involved with SIFE. Anybody here do SIFE?
Inactive.
Oh,
It's now
just a-
inactive.
Oh, it's inactive? Okay.
Inactus. The organization, International Nonprofit.
Oh, it's called something else. Okay.
They
got it.
changed their name.
Yeah, so I got involved with SIFE. I looked for any opportunity to, because I wanted to potentially own my own business. So whatever's on campus, dive into it. Look for things that you can relate to. I think all of those helped pave the way. But I also, walking away, thought, how am I going to get into corporate America? I didn't necessarily felt like it was going to be easy. I think Adventist Health Systems was a great door opener because I did an internship, the Leaders in Development Program, which is not necessarily easy to get into. They take like a handful of people every year. Doing that, but Chicago, and just continue to push the envelope and not settling for the status quo. And if somebody asks you to do this, just do 2 or 3 times that. And there's no guarantees. I mean, but you can always, you pray about it and see what God opens for you. Golf balls or a canteen?
I'll take the canteen if you don't want to.
Yep, got 2 more.